Never thought I'd watch a grown woman poison a dog in broad daylight and somehow still sleep fine that night. But I guess people get real comfortable when they've spent years bullying everyone around them without consequences. 3 days after my dog died, half the families in our neighborhood were standing in line outside portable toilets baking in 94-degree Georgia heat. And the same woman who used to fine people over mailbox paint was suddenly crying in front of a county inspector asking me to please be reasonable. Funny how fast people discover humility when sewage gets involved. My name's Ryan Mercer. I'm 41, divorced, one daughter, and until last summer, I honestly believed the best way to deal with difficult people was to keep your head down and outwork them. Turns out, that philosophy has limits. I live in a gated neighborhood outside Alpharetta called Willow Creek Preserve, one of those places with stone entry signs, fake luxury vibes, identical lawns, and neighbors who smile at you during cookouts while filing complaints about your trash cans after midnight. I bought my place in 2019 after my divorce because my daughter Emma needed stability, and honestly, so did I. Construction management pays decent money if you don't mind stress-eating gas station sandwiches and answering calls at 6 in the morning, so I scraped together enough for a modest house with a backyard big enough for Emma and our Bernese mountain dog, Scout. Scout came into our lives about 6 months after my ex-wife left. Emma stopped talking much after the divorce. Not angry, just quiet in a way that made the house feel hollow. Then one rainy Saturday, we found this oversized fluffy idiot at a rescue event, sitting in a kiddie pool refusing to move. And for the first time in months, Emma laughed. Full laugh. Tears in her eyes laughing. That dog basically stitched my kid back together. Which is why what happened still keeps me awake some nights. The queen of Willow Creek was a woman named Denise Holloway. 70 years old, retired real estate broker, walked around the neighborhood like she personally founded suburbia. If a kid's bike sat on a lawn too long, Denise noticed. If somebody parked facing the wrong direction overnight, Denise noticed. She once sent a 3-page HOA violation letter because a family painted their shutters an unauthorized shade of navy. Nobody liked her, but everybody tolerated her because arguing with Denise was exhausting. She weaponized rules the way some people weaponize religion. And for some reason, she absolutely hated Scout. Said he barked too loud. He didn't. Said his fur blew into her flower beds. Probably true. Honestly, that dog shed like a malfunctioning carpet. But the real issue started when Emma caught Denise spraying something through the fence one afternoon while Scout was outside. Emma came running and yelling, "Dad, that old lady's trying to poison him." I thought it was kid exaggeration at first until I walked out there and smelled vinegar and cayenne pepper all along the fence line. Denise stood in her yard wearing gardening gloves and oversized sunglasses like a cartoon villain. I remember saying, "You got a problem, Denise?" And she smiled without even looking embarrassed. "I'm protecting my property value, Ryan." I laughed because it sounded insane. From a dog. She looked right at Scout laying in the grass. From irresponsible people. That was the thing about Denise. She never raised her voice. Never got emotional. Somehow that made her worse. Over the next few months, the complaints escalated. HOA notices about barking, loose leash accusations. One complaint claiming Scout acted aggressively toward residents, even though the dog was terrified of vacuum cleaners and once got scared by a butterfly. I installed cameras mostly because I was tired of arguing. My friend Nate, who lived 2 houses down, told me, "Man, old ladies with free time are more dangerous than cartel accountants." At the time, I thought he was joking. Then came Tuesday, June 11th. Emma was at my sister's house because I got stuck late at a commercial site inspection in Roswell. Around 7:40 p.m., my phone started vibrating nonstop. 4 missed calls from Emma. 1 from Nate. I answered expecting something minor and immediately heard Emma sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. "Dad, Scout's sick." I don't even remember the drive home, just running red lights and praying I wouldn't hear those sounds again, because once you hear your kid cry like that, something inside you changes. When I pulled into the driveway, Scout was convulsing near the back patio, foam around his mouth, while Emma knelt beside him screaming his name. And Nate looked at me with this expression I'll never forget, because before he even spoke, I knew. He quietly said, "Ryan, check your cameras." Barely remember walking into the house. Everything after that felt weirdly slow, like my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Emma was still outside with Scout, crying into his fur while Nate tried to keep her calm, and I just stood there in the kitchen staring at the monitor over the counter with my hands shaking so bad I missed the mouse twice. The footage pulled up automatically from earlier that afternoon. 3:12 p.m. Bright sunlight, empty street, birds chirping like it was any normal summer day. Then Denise appeared at the edge of the frame, carrying one of those plastic tumblers old people drag around everywhere. Red cup, white lid. She looked both directions before stepping onto my driveway. Not nervous, though. That's the part that got me. She looked annoyed, like she was doing a chore she didn't want to do. Scout trotted over wagging his tail, because of course he did. He loved everybody. Denise bent down beside his water bowl, popped the lid off the cup, and poured in this neon blue liquid that swirled through the water for maybe 2 seconds before dissolving. Then she patted Scout on the head. Patted him, like she was saying goodbye. I paused the footage and just sat there staring at the screen while this pressure built in my chest so hard I thought I might actually black out. Nate walked in behind me and watched the replay without saying a word. After a minute he muttered, "Jesus Christ." Emma came inside right then asking if Scout was going to be okay, and I had to wipe my face before turning around because no kid should ever see their father looking that helpless. We rushed Scout to an emergency vet in Milton. The entire drive Emma sat in the back seat holding his head in her lap whispering, "Stay with me, buddy. Please stay with me." And every few minutes Scout would twitch or whine this awful strained sound that didn't even sound like a dog anymore. The vet already knew before the blood work came back. Ethylene glycol poisoning. Antifreeze. Apparently it tastes sweet to dogs. Sweet. There's something deeply evil about that detail that still bothers me. Scout died around 11:20 that night, while Emma held onto his paw. I signed paperwork with one hand while trying not to collapse in front of my daughter with the other. Back home, Emma locked herself in her room, and I sat alone at the kitchen table replaying that footage over and over again until sunrise. You ever get so angry your body gets cold instead of hot? That's where I was. Not screaming anger. Not revenge movie anger. Just this quiet, dangerous clarity. Around 6 in the morning, I called the sheriff's department. Deputy came out, watched the footage, took statements, nodded a lot. Said the toxicology report would help, but prosecution could take time. Animal cruelty cases can get complicated. Complicated. My daughter's dog was murdered, and somehow it was complicated. Denise denied everything within hours. Claimed the footage was misleading. Said she'd merely poured harmless weed treatment near the bowl. Then by noon the HOA somehow emailed the entire neighborhood claiming there was an unfortunate misunderstanding involving a pet illness. Pet illness. Like Scout caught a cold instead of being poisoned on camera. That email was the moment something inside me snapped loose completely. See, Denise wasn't just trying to escape consequences. She was counting on the neighborhood protecting her because people in communities like Willow Creek hate conflict more than they hate corruption. Everybody whispers behind closed doors, but nobody wants drama attached to their property value. That afternoon, Nate came over with beer and bad ideas, which is basically our friendship in a sentence. He said, "You want to slash her tires?" Because emotionally, I'm available. I laughed for the first time in 24 hours, but I wasn't interested in vandalism. I wanted something cleaner. Something that would hurt the way Denise hurt people. Publicly, systematically, legally. That's when I remembered something from closing paperwork years earlier. During inspection, the realtor mentioned part of my backyard contained a utility easement connected to the neighborhood's septic infrastructure. At the time, I barely listened because who gets excited about sewage systems during a divorce? But now I suddenly cared a whole lot. So I dug through old documents in my garage until I found the survey maps and property deed. And there it was. Lot 14. My lot. Main access point for Willow Creek's shared lift station and wastewater pump controls. 43 homes routed through equipment sitting entirely on my property behind a locked maintenance enclosure. I actually called a property attorney friend of mine named Carla just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. She came by Wednesday morning, read through the easement language twice, then slowly lowered the papers and stared at me across the patio table. "Ryan, this is permissive access." Meaning technically, access exists because the property owner allows it. And if the property owner stops allowing it. Carla gave me this look like she was deciding whether she should answer ethically or honestly. Finally, she said, "Then Willow Creek has a very expensive problem." Now, before anybody jumps into the comments saying I overreacted, understand something. I didn't wake up wanting revenge. I wanted accountability. I wanted Denise to look Emma in the eye and admit what she did. Instead, she hid behind lawyers and HOA emails while my kid cried herself to sleep hugging Scout's collar. So yeah, maybe my patience expired. By Wednesday afternoon, I rented chain-link fencing from a local equipment supplier and enclosed the entire lift station access road. Big metal gate. Heavy commercial lock. Then I posted laminated notices every 20 feet. Access to private utility property is temporarily revoked pending legal review. Contact HOA management for alternative wastewater solutions. Nate stood there reading the sign while sipping sweet tea like we were admiring landscaping work. This, he said proudly, is the pettiest thing I've ever witnessed. We're not done yet, I told him. The first call started within an hour. HOA board members, maintenance contractors, confused residents. I ignored most of them. Denise finally called around dinner time. Her voice came through sharp and controlled like always. Remove the fencing immediately. No, you cannot obstruct community utilities. Funny, I said. You seemed real comfortable interfering with things living on my property. Silence. Then she switched tactics. Ryan, I think grief is clouding your judgment. That line right there almost made me lose it. I leaned back in my chair and said quietly, you poisoned a little girl's dog, Denise. Don't talk to me about judgment. She hung up. Thursday morning maintenance crews arrived and found the gate locked tight. By afternoon, the neighborhood Facebook page looked like a disaster zone. Toilets bubbling. Drains backing up. Sulfur smell spreading through multiple homes. One woman posted 17 angry updates in 2 hours because sewage water ruined her laundry room tile. Another guy threatened legal action while standing in his driveway, wearing boat shoes and panic. And through all of it, I kept thinking about Emma sitting on the vet clinic floor holding Scout's leash after he died. Funny how empathy finally shows up once inconvenience becomes personal. Then Friday came, and with it, the portable toilets. By Friday afternoon, Willow Creek looked less like an upscale, gated community and more like the parking lot of a country music festival after a thunderstorm. Bright blue portable toilets lined the streets beside luxury SUVs and perfectly trimmed hedges. And the smell. Dear God, the smell. Georgia heat in June does things to sewage that should probably violate the Geneva Convention. You'd see grown adults speed walking down sidewalks pretending not to make eye contact while carrying rolls of toilet paper like survivors in some suburban apocalypse movie. Nate came over around lunchtime, took one deep breath outside, and immediately started laughing so hard he had to lean against my mailbox. Buddy, he wheezed. You turned an HOA into a refugee camp. The crazy part is I still hadn't touched the actual system. I never damaged anything. Never shut off pumps. All I did was deny physical access to equipment sitting on my land. The system itself failed naturally once routine servicing stopped and overflow alarms started triggering. Legally speaking, that distinction mattered a lot. Emotionally speaking, well, let's just say the neighborhood suddenly became very interested in property rights. Around 3 o'clock, a black Escalade rolled up outside my house, and Denise climbed out wearing white slacks and this giant sun hat, like she was arriving for brunch instead of a sewage negotiation. 2 attorneys followed behind her along with a county utilities inspector named Marcus Hill, this tired-looking guy carrying a clipboard who already seemed annoyed to be involved. Denise marched right up to my driveway and snapped, "Open the gate." Now, I stayed seated on my porch. Afternoon, Denise. This has gone far enough. Scout probably thought the same thing. Her jaw tightened hard at that one. The taller attorney stepped forward, trying the calm professional approach. Mr. Mercer, obstructing access to essential wastewater infrastructure creates public health concerns. Then maybe the HOA shouldn't have let a board member poison my dog. Denise pointed at me immediately. There is no proof of that accusation. I looked over at Marcus, the county inspector. You want to see the footage? Marcus blinked. There's footage? 10 minutes later, we were all sitting in my living room watching Denise pour antifreeze into Scout's water bowl on a 70-inch television in painful high definition. Nobody spoke afterward. Marcus just slowly rubbed his forehead and muttered, "Well, that certainly changes the tone of this conversation." Denise looked pale for the first time since I'd known her. One attorney quietly whispered something to the other while Nate stood in the kitchen pretending not to enjoy himself. Marcus eventually cleared his throat and asked the question that changed everything. The lift station enclosure is entirely on your parcel? Yep. And the easement language is permissive? Carla, my attorney, stepped forward with documents already prepared. Correct. We reviewed county records Wednesday. Marcus read through the paperwork for maybe 30 seconds before exhaling deeply. Then he looked directly at Denise and said, Mrs. Holloway, this county cannot compel access without emergency court authorization, and given the circumstances here. He didn't finish the sentence because honestly he didn't need to. Denise finally lost her composure. This is insane, she shouted. People are suffering because of a dog. I stood up then, calm as could be. No, Denise. People are suffering because you thought being HOA president made you untouchable. Dead silence. Even the attorneys stopped moving. I walked over to the fireplace where Emma had placed Scout's framed paw print from the vet clinic. My daughter watched her best friend die on our patio, I said quietly. You don't get to minimize that because the victim had 4 legs. For the first time since all this started, Denise looked uncertain. Not guilty exactly. People like her rarely feel guilt the same way normal folks do. But she looked scared, because suddenly this wasn't neighborhood gossip anymore. It was evidence, liability, public humiliation, and outside, $30,000 worth of portable toilets were baking in the sun while residents demanded answers. Negotiations started an hour later at my dining room table. Not yelling, not threats, just numbers and terms. Carla handled most of it while I sat there listening. The HOA agreed to cover full veterinary costs, private grief counseling for Emma, and a settlement for emotional damages. Denise herself had to resign from the board immediately and issue a written public apology during the next community meeting. But honestly, the clause that mattered most to me was simpler than money. From then on, any chemical treatment or pest control used near residential fence lines required homeowner notification and approval. No more anonymous spraying. No more power trips disguised as policy. Denise signed the agreement with trembling hands sometime around 7 that evening. Before leaving, she paused near the front door and looked at me. You destroyed this neighborhood over a dog. I shook my head. No, Denise. You did that the second you decided my daughter's pain didn't matter. Then she left. The gate got unlocked Saturday morning. Utility crews rushed in like disaster relief workers while neighbors watched from their driveways holding coffee cups and years of bottled-up resentment. Funny enough, several residents actually thanked me quietly afterward. One older guy leaned over and whispered, Honestly, somebody should have stood up to her years ago. Emma didn't say much through any of this. Grief made her quieter than usual. Sunday evening, we buried Scout beneath the big maple tree near the back fence where he used to nap every afternoon. Emma placed his favorite tennis ball beside the grave while I set the small granite marker into the dirt. Good boy. Forever loved. The sun was setting through the trees, and for a minute everything felt still again. Not fixed, just still. Emma slipped her hand into mine and asked softly, Do you think Mom would have been proud of what you did? Man, kids ask questions that cut straight through you. I looked out toward the neighborhood, toward the identical houses and perfect lawns, and all the people inside pretending everything was normal again. I honestly don't know, I told her. But I know nobody's ever gonna hurt what matters to us and walk away smiling again. And if I'm being honest, part of me still wonders whether I went too far. I didn't break the law, but I definitely broke the illusion that communities like Willow Creek run on kindness and neighborly values. Most of the time, they run on fear, convenience, and whoever's willing to push hardest. So now I want to ask you, if somebody poisoned your family dog, then hid behind money, lawyers, and HOA rules to avoid consequences, what would you have done? Would you have let the courts handle it? Or would you have made sure the whole neighborhood felt the weight of it too? Let me know in the comments, because even now, I still can't decide whether what I did was justice, revenge, or maybe something sitting uncomfortably in between.